Okay, and let's go. Start. Oh. Load. And here we go. So we just had the holy shit moment. And yeah. I wonder how Maria is gonna take all this. I mean, she hasn't even heard yet that her mother was brutally murdered. And considering she was already pretty, how should I put it? Pretty, well, unhappy, I guess, that her mother was not sleeping where she was supposed to sleep. I wonder how she will react to this. Okay. All that could be heard was the sound of the rain, the voices from the kids' TV program Maria was watching, and the engrossed Maria's cackling voice. In other words, what greeted them as they returned dumbfounded from that horrible, bizarre scene was the voice of Maria as she rolled around laughing at the TV. Let me know if my voice is too loud or not loud enough. Or if it's fine, just don't say anything. Those who returned to the room didn't know how to explain to Maria that her mother was dead and were trapped by a suffocating silence. Yeah, just what I was about to, what I mentioned earlier. She doesn't know it yet. At first, Maria returned their stares with a dubious look, but when she realized they weren't trying to blame her for anything, she ignored them and again immersed herself in the TV program. The children wordlessly sat down heavily on the sofa. Their minds were probably blank from their state of shock. Yeah, not surprised. Everyone had already cried and mourned so much, but now they just vaguely sat there, their faces seeming to have lost all emotion. Yeah, that's the thing, like, what do you do after the first shock? After all the reactions you have to something like that happening, and when you kind of return to, not normal, but to a more collected state? But then what do? You just sit there and like, what the hell? What do you do? Only Kanon had returned to his usual calm expression. However, that probably didn't mean he'd been able to wipe out the shock. Nothing was reflected in his eyes as he stared into empty space. Hideyoshi kept on fidgeting, and every time he remembered that horrible scene, he started muttering about how he couldn't believe it, how it couldn't have been something from this world, how it must have been the work of demons. Yeah, I think at least Kinzo would probably agree there. Also, there was something I wanted to mention, and I immediately forgot what it was. Oh no, I remember. So, the game was very, played me very well, because it really made it so I thought that those who remain shall tear apart, the two who are close, would refer to Shannon and George. It really was, I don't know, it felt so much like that was what it was supposed to refer to. So it was well played that they just killed Shannon right away. So now I'm wondering if it's maybe going to be Eva and Hideyoshi, because last time Hideyoshi said some pretty cool stuff, and usually characters who say cool stuff and get very, likable are the ones that get killed next. Who knows? Every now and then, his mutterings produced a question directed at Nanjo, but the latter kept repeating in a calm, doctor-like manner that nothing could be understood by only glancing at the scene, and that until the police arrived, they wouldn't learn anything. However, Nanjo only appeared calm next to Hideyoshi, who simply couldn't suppress his agitation and fear. In fact, Nanjo had also received a huge shock, and his face was deathly pale. Maybe that atmosphere was why she tried to rise to the challenge and take charge. Natsuhi is going to take charge, oh yeah. Natsuhi appeared to be unchanged from her normal attitude, and she briskly gave directions. I will go see father. Kenji, quickly contact the police. Certainly. I wonder if you would allow me to tag along, Natsuhi-san. I wonder if they're still going to, like, be unfriendly to each other, or maybe they're going to, like, maybe Eva's going to pull herself together, considering the situation right now is not so fitting. Since Klaus Nissan is now gone, the task of aiding father has been left to me. It would be improper of me to relax here while relying entirely on you. Oh, so much for that. Natsuhi was struck speechless by Eva's aggressive move in a situation like this. She seemed to be claiming that, with Klaus dead, the one to take responsibility shouldn't be his wife, but herself, the next highly ranked in the family. Or maybe she hadn't been at all happy when Natsuhi took command without reference to her in such an extreme situation. However, even Aoife's mind had been blank from shock until a moment ago. She only came to her senses after Natsui started giving orders.
Just do as you like.
Natsui started walking without saying a word more. Aoife followed behind her. As they did, Kumasawa ran into the parlor. She usually wasn't the kind of person to run around, so under normal conditions, most people would have taken her entrance as a sign that something was the matter, but because everyone was so stricken with shock, they hardly even noticed her.
Madam.
If you're looking for Natsui-san, she went to see father. She'll probably be back soon. What happened, Kumasawa-san?
You see, in the dining hall, there was blood. Blood.
The ears of everyone in the parlor twitched. Everyone thought the same thing. I hope I misheard that. Any container can only hold so much, and no one here would be capable of handling yet another tragedy. Well, I mean, everybody else has been seen, right? So they all thought it. I hope I misheard that.
What happened in the dining hall?
When I went to the dining hall to set up for breakfast.
What, are you Yoshi? The first one to start running was George. His harsh footsteps jogged Hideyoshi and Nanjo to their senses, and they chased after him. Battler and the others followed. They flew into the dining hall one after another, but they didn't find any change that might have caused Kumasawa to go pale. To those who had viewed that gruesome scene in the storehouse, it was a bit of an anticlimax. However, Kumasawa, who had followed them, pointed it out. There really were some traces of blood remaining on the floor. Compared to that terrible scene, it wasn't very impressive. However, if you calmly thought about it, this definitely indicated the loss of a lot of blood.
There's another puddle of blood over here. What in the world?
It appears that a great deal of time has passed. It's probably safe to say that they were killed here last night.
Well, really? I don't know. That wouldn't... If they had been killed... Oh, then again... I was about to say if they had been killed here, then shouldn't there be a lot of blood here and not so much in the shed? But I mean, they could have been killed here in a not so brutal manner, and then the whole, like, mutilation could have happened in the shed, and that would explain there being much more blood in the shed. So whatever I was about to say, I take it back.
It definitely looks that way. We were talking together in the dining hall until late in the night. After that, someone might have forced their way in.
Dad, when did you and Mom slip out of the meeting and go to sleep?
It was a little past midnight. So we should probably assume it happened after that.
Yeah, I think at midnight you had this scene where you still saw everybody for the last time.
Are you kidding me? Give me a break. Milady, please stay strong.
What the hell are you laughing for? After seeing that hell on earth in the storehouse, this is nothing. I get it, it wasn't a funny laugh.
Really? Good for you. I feel like my head's gonna explode. This is the dining hall, right? Every day this is where I'd eat, complain about school, complain about homework, talk to my dad about my grades. That's what this place is to me. Milady, it wouldn't be good to remain here any longer. Let's return to the parlor.
I agree. Uncle Hideyoshi, I think this room will be really important to the police. Don't you think it'd be bad if we trampled all over it? Battler proposed this in a slightly firm voice as, along with Kanon, he grabbed the pail and shaking Jessica's shoulders.
Everything is just as Battler-san has said. There's nothing more to be gained from remaining in this room.
Nanjo spoke while looking at everyone's pale faces. Even though that horrible scene in the storehouse felt like something not of this world, at least then we'd been able to leave, to get ourselves off from that place and run away. Everyone had shared in that feeling. However, this dining hall was different. It was in the mansion, the main building on this estate, and as Jessica had said, it should have been one of the most calming places even inside the mansion. Yeah, the next time they eat something is going to be great, because they'll remember this as well. I'm not even sure if they're going to eat here. Probably they're not going to eat here. But still, they're going to remember it. It was where all of the relatives had eaten lunch and dinner yesterday. The shock of seeing this place smeared with blood reminded us of that horrible spectacle in the storehouse, and forced us to accept that we hadn't really been able to run away from the scene of that tragedy.
I agree too. The culprit might have left traces in this room. Amateurs like us shouldn't stir the place up. Let's leave quickly. Quickly.
Hideyoshi also understood the meaning of what Battler had said and pushed everyone to hurry out of the dining hall. The way we were then, looking at that blood any longer would have been too harsh. Nobody went against his words. Everyone raced each other out of the dining hall. It was almost as though the last person in the room would be trapped in there, all alone. Oh, that's a scary thought. Once in the hallway, we lent a hand to Kumasawa, who was still trembling and leaning against the wall, and we all headed back to the parlor together. Then Genji returned.
Oh, Genji-san, were you able to contact the police?
Let me guess, no.
As to that, I'm afraid I must apologize. I don't know if it was a failure of the radio or something else that caused it, but...
What the? So you couldn't contact the police?
I vaguely remember, I don't know if it was Kinzo himself, but somebody said something that kind of sounded like this island was now cut off from the rest of the world or something. Like it sounded almost like he was saying the island was not in the real world anymore or something. I might misremember that, but I vaguely remember there was a sentence that kind of sounded like that. So I was already wondering if maybe they now cannot contact anybody anymore because maybe they're not where they think they are.
Both the phone and the radio failed?
My apologies. A boat will be arriving on Monday morning, and I believe we will be able to borrow their communications equipment.
Isn't there a boat on this island? Can't we just take a little trip out of the Nijima Police Department?
Well, I mean, there's still the typhoon, isn't there?
Hideyoshi-san, that would be impossible with this weather. At the very least, we can't do anything until the typhoon passes us by.
Klaus-sama's boat is being repaired and is not on the island. Therefore, we must wait for the boat coming on Monday.
How could this happen? 6 people are dead. The phones and radio aren't working, and there's no boat. So, until the typhoon passes and the boat comes, in other words, until tomorrow morning, we're gonna be stuck here on this island, unable to contact the police, aren't we?
Which means that not just us. I was about to say, not you are stuck, not just you, but the criminal who killed everyone is also confined to this island.
That certainly follows. The culprit who killed everyone is still here, on the island. So the bastard who killed Dad and the others must still be hiding somewhere, unable to escape. Damn it. I'll catch that bastard. No way I'll hand him over to the police. I'll slice him to bits myself. No.
Okay, I think you should have chosen your words more carefully, everyone here, considering that she's still there. Yeah. No shit, I mean, did you listen to yourself? Maria had finally realized that something odd was happening in the parlor. Rather than noticing something odd, it was probably better to say she felt unhappy and neglected since everyone was getting so excited about something only she didn't know about.
Ooh, Jessica Oni-chan, did someone die?
What? Well, now you're being creepy. The way she spoke was completely calm. Just as though she was talking about someone who had appeared in a television drama, as though it was someone else's problem. Jessica probably didn't like that. As though trying to say, "Can't you tell just by looking at me?" Overwhelmed with grief, she flared up at Maria.
They all died. Everyone. My dad and Battler's parents, Goda-san and Shannon, and even your mother too.
Oh, damn. I mean, okay, I get you're mad, but you still could have phrased that a bit better.
Stop it, Jessica-chan. You aren't the only one who's sad.
Maria-san, I know this will come as a shock, but please listen. Your mother has died.
Mama died?
Yeah, someone killed her. I know it's sad, but stay strong.
How many people died? 6 people. 6 people. Damn it.
Or she's gonna be like, okay, so it's just somebody is following the epitaph, so they're gonna be revived anyway, and I'm happy, I don't care. Because I think she strongly believes in everything that's written here, and it does say at the end something like, one shall be the resurrection of all the dead souls. So if she has read this a million times and believes in it, then maybe she's not even gonna be sad, she's gonna be like, yeah, who cares? I wonder.
How could anyone do something that cruel? There's a limit to how cruel you can be if you're human. I don't know who it is, but the culprit isn't human. There's no way the blood is red. The culprit isn't human. It's just that...
What? It's just the chosen by the I guess sacrifices chosen by the demon's roulette? Didn't it say something like that? 6 chosen by the key as sacrifices. And I think in the characters it also said something like... she was chosen by the demon's roulette. Probably that's what... Huh? Hey Maria, did you say something just now? Maria had just said something, but since the words were so remotely separate from the flow and context of the conversation, I couldn't understand them for a second. When I tried to ask her to repeat it again, I was shocked by the sudden sound of Aunt Natsuhi's loud voice coming from the entrance to the parlor. It looked like Aunt Natsuhi and Aunt Eva had returned from their trip to see grandfather. Uh-oh.
You can't contact them even with the radio? If we can't use it at a time like this, why do we even have an emergency radio?
My apologies. It was supposed to have a maintenance inspection every year.
Wait, don't you have one of those boat signaling devices that makes a flashing light? Couldn't you use that to contact the next island?
Like, so eine Signalpistole meint sie wohl.
We do not have such equipment. My sincere apologies.
Just then, Kumasawa arrived, pushing a serving cart loaded with breakfast. I'm sure everyone is not gonna want to eat breakfast right now, but okay. Since there was no way we'd be able to eat in the dining hall, Hideyoshi had ordered her to take it to the parlor.
Why are we eating breakfast here?
Matsui-san, I'll tell you later.
Right, she didn't see the bloodstain.
More importantly, Eva, how was father?
Judging by the fact that he's not with you, it seems he will not leave his room, not even for a situation like this.
He wasn't there. Uh-oh. The room was empty.
What the? Where could he have gone at a time like this?
Do you mean to say the master has left his study?
Maybe he's the one who killed them.
That is correct. I was surprised myself. I wonder when he left his room. Do any of you have an idea?
Oh, it means something updated. Huh. In the menu, maybe here? What the hell? It's gray. It doesn't have color anymore. Disappeared from his study unnoticed. Kinzo's study has everything from a bed to a toilet to a bathtub, so it is extremely rare for him to go outside. However, he does occasionally go out for a walk on a whim without telling anybody, and his disappearance invariably leads to a huge uproar throughout the house. He usually comes back as soon as he gets hungry. Usually. I like how they put the usually there. Thanks for the hint, by the way. I didn't know that. Natsuhi looked at Genji and Kanon as she said this. Maybe she was trying to ask whether the servants who served directly under the one-winged eagle, good lord, knew of a place he might go. I almost read that as one-winged angel again. However, it was probably the other way around. Their faces made it clear that those who knew Kinzo best realized even more than the rest how impossible it was for him to leave his room.
Even we have no idea.
As you all know, within that study the master had everything from a place to sleep to a bathroom. I couldn't imagine him leaving that room except for a significant reason.
In that case, what? Isn't it natural to assume that one of those significant reasons came up?
We still cannot be certain that's the case. Anyway, he is a fickle person, so it's possible he went for a walk by himself, unaware of the current situation. If that is the case, then we must act in all haste to tell him what has happened and ask for instructions. That's right. Although I don't want to think about it, it's possible something has happened to him, isn't it? I'd rather not even consider such a sinister possibility.
No one had seen Kinzo since the discovery of those 6 terrible corpses. On top of that, the phones were broken, the radio wouldn't reach anyone, and there was no way to contact the police. Apparently the typhoon would leave tomorrow, and a boat would come, but until then, no one could rely on anyone outside the island, nor could they escape the island. The tragedy had hit everyone so abruptly that they'd lost all their composure. Everyone felt a heavy silence. Everyone was impatient. Even though they needed to do something, they couldn't think of anything, so some of them held their heads in their arms while others got irritated. Right now, no one could explain what was occurring on this island, Rokkenjima. How did you spell the island again? I mean, Jima is just the island, but what was Rokken? After that, we ate the breakfast Kumasawa-san had made, which felt dry and tasteless. Yeah, I guess Mortal Kombat is out of the window now. Man, I really wanted some Mortal Kombat. Of course, this was right after something like that had happened. No one felt particularly hungry. Knew it. However, we understood logically that not eating would weaken our bodies. It would also be rude to Kumasawa-san, who had made the breakfast. Kumasawa-san had taken some unusual Western vegetables, ones that Goda-san had probably ordered for his ultra-elaborate meals, and cooked them in a Japanese style, which made them turn an unpleasant color. How fitting. Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of fitting that it has the 6 in there and we have 6 sacrifices now. As to what Goda-san had been planning to cook with those ingredients, right then I couldn't even imagine it. If I did think about it, I'd be reminded of the way Goda-san died, and a sour taste would fill the inside of my mouth. Everyone pretended to eat for the time being, but of course no one made much progress. Then we began pooling our knowledge of our current situation. What, so Maria just didn't react at all, apart from saying something weird? Huh. First off, 6 people, which included Uncle Klaus, my dad, Kuria-san, Aunt Rosa, Goda-san, and Shannon-chan, had been found in the Rose Garden storehouse as brutally mutilated corpses. And yet, we still couldn't contact the police since both the phones and the radio were unusable. So, until the typhoon passed, there was nothing we could do. Furthermore, Grandfather, who we might have hoped would be able to show a little leadership in this kind of situation, had disappeared some time ago. Goda-san hadn't made breakfast, so Grandfather's stomach must have been empty, and if he had just been taking a casual walk, we should have been able to hear him whining about how hungry he was by now. And despite that, he hadn't appeared. There was more than a small chance that he'd gotten caught up in this crime. According to my aunts, on their way back from Kinzo's study, they had searched for him, calling out on every floor, but were unable to find him. Considering the timing of it all, it's only reasonable to assume that this disappearance had something to do with the crime. Yeah, I would say the same thing. We figured Dad and the rest were probably killed in the dining hall and then painstakingly moved to the storehouse. So maybe Grandfather has already been killed and dragged to some strange place, which we simply haven't discovered yet. I mean, the island is big, right? No one actually said it out loud, but this theory seemed extremely convincing. Yeah, or he did it, but I mean, that would be too easy, wouldn't it?
We will go check that all of the windows and doors are locked. We must also conduct a thorough search for Father. The children must remain in this room. Eva-san and Hideyoshi-san, I'm sorry, but please stay here with the children. I'd like to ask you the same, Dr. Nanjo.
I understand. I will wait here.
Aunt Natsui followed the servants, Genji-san, Kumasawa-san, and Kanon-kun out of the parlor. All that was left was Aunt Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, Dr. Nanjo, and the 4 of his children, a total of 7 people. I wonder how long it's going to take until somebody starts accusing, until they start accusing each other, because, I mean, could have been one of them, right?
Let's all stick together to maybe watch some television while we wait. Though I doubt we'll find anything good in the middle of the day on a Sunday.
Uncle Hideyoshi started acting cheerfully, trying to brighten up this gloomy atmosphere.
Woo! Good job, watch it! Woo!
Oh, really? You want to watch TV, Maria-chan? Then come and watch it with your uncle.
Maria was the only one who joined in. Even though Maria had been told of her mother's death, she didn't show the slightest flicker in her emotions. Was it really normal for a 9-year-old girl like Maria to act so much like a very young child? Everyone else's mood failed to improve, and they each sank absent-mindedly into their sofas. Aniki, can I ask you something?
What is it?
Just now in the storehouse, you said something about Shannon-chan and a ring. Did you give that to her? Why did you bring that up? I mean, that must hurt. George Aniki didn't answer, but he hung his head and closed both of his eyes. There could be no clearer response.
Quit it, Battler. Figure it out yourself.
You're right. I shouldn't have asked. Yeah. I agree.
That's right, it was me. Last night, I proposed to her.
That was when I gave her the ring. I told her that tomorrow she should put it on whatever finger she wanted as her answer. Guess it was a pretty pretentious thing to say. And that ring had been on the ring finger of Shannon Chan's left hand.
Well, several years ago, Shannon came to me asking for advice about you, George Neeson.
I wonder what she could have said.
Shannon was always really bad at lying. It was obvious pretty quickly that you were the one she was talking about. She asked whether it would be okay for her to get close to someone even though she was only a servant. She asked about what kinds of things boys like, what kind of clothes she should wear to make them happy. Lots of stuff like that. Well, I guess you could say I felt envious hearing her say that. So then she was given an engagement ring and it all ended right there?
Different people value things differently, but being proposed to by a man, well, it can be the high point of your life. Not sure who is saying that right now. So I'm sure Shannon was happy from the bottom of her heart. Happier than she's ever been since the day of her birth. Oh, hi, Milky. Coffee and Milky, that's nice. So you showed up. Judge Aniki sighed deeply without raising his head, or maybe tears had risen to his eyes. It seems Shannon was on duty in the guest house last night, but because she was too embarrassed to go back to the guest house with me, she went over to the mansion.
Think about how Shannon must have felt. When you receive an engagement ring, then no matter how much warning you've been given beforehand, it's perfectly normal to get so excited that your mind goes blank. She must have been incredibly embarrassed.
Yeah, Zifi is always taken as well. I know the feeling. And then Shannon went to the mansion even though she hadn't been assigned there, helped Gorda-san with his work and got caught up in this crime. If only I hadn't given her that ring. Don't do that, dude. If you go down that path, you're gonna hate yourself forever. On that day, in that place, Saya wouldn't have been caught up in that crime. Aniki, that's the one place where you're wrong. It's definitely wrong, so don't cry anymore. Yeah, I'm not gonna do this screaming.
Betlakun, let's leave him be.
After Aunt Eva said that, I stopped talking to him. Misplaced words of comfort might actually do more harm than good. Jessica sat down next to Aniki and put an arm around him. Maybe only Jessica, who had known about Aniki and Shannon's love since the beginning, and who had even discussed that relationship with Shannon, could comfort Aniki right now. Comfort. I went over to Aunt Eva and sat down in the opposite sofa.
Betlakun, you really are strong. It looks like you've kept a good hold on yourself.
Well, look, the depth of the love becomes the depth of the wound, right? After all, it's not like how that old bastard died has anything to do with me. I feel bad about Curious-san, but, well, she wasn't actually my parent.
My. If that's so, you certainly were crying a lot back then.
Well, I did think at least that much crying was... Well, I did think at least that much crying was due as gratitude to the parent who raised me.
The speed of that changeover in the dry tone must have come from Rudolph. That kid would always get violently happy, sad and angry, but he'd always regain his cool immediately afterwards.
It's nothing like that. I haven't really been able to get over the shock yet. I think the only difference between me and everybody else is the kinds of emotions it's stirred in me.
What do you mean?
I've been acting much calmer than George, Aniki, and Jessica. That wasn't because my sadness was any less intense or because I'd already recovered. My sadness was simply getting replaced gradually with a different emotion. Rather than sad, I say I'm more pissed off. What bastard did this and where? It's kind of been eating at me that I didn't get a chance to smack him upside the face. That was what I really wanted to do. I couldn't forgive myself if I just sat there, overwhelmed with sadness and hugging my knees. Since the time Dad and the others were killed, this island has been covered by the typhoon, which means the bastard responsible for all this is still somewhere on this island.
Yes, that would seem to be the case. I wonder if they're hiding somewhere in that dark forest even now.
I felt like I'd had a very similar conversation with Curious on the night before. That's right. After the letter from the person claiming to be Beatrice appeared at the dinner table last night, we talked about whether or not a 19th person actually exists. That reminds me, I have been wondering why Rudolph was already had this premonition that he would be killed. I think that's kind of weird. Like, there was the letter from Beatrice, but why did that cause him to suddenly talk about, that he might get killed that night? Where did that premonition come from? Been wondering about that. Aunt Eva, do you think this murder has anything to do with the letter from Beatrice last night?
Ah, that one. Well, I wonder. All of the siblings agreed that the mysterious letter was sent so further complicate
good lord, can't read today.
Sent to further complicate the problem of father's inheritance. As to whether that and the case this morning are related, it's impossible to tell at this stage.
Was that letter really given to Maria by some witch called Beatrice?
How could it be? All of it was a farce devised by father, wasn't it? He made Shannon-chan or someone wear the dress from the portrait and trick Maria-chan, right? Isn't that just the kind of overly intricate prank father would pull?
Last night I talked with Curious-san about whether Beatrice actually exists, and Curious-san also said that Beatrice was probably one of the 18 of us.
Isn't that obvious? There's no one else on this island besides us, right? Then there must be someone amongst us who's pretending to be Beatrice.
There's no one else but us on this island, you think?
Obviously, right. Are you saying there could be someone else here other than us? No one is on this island except us. There are only 18 people. So the one pretending to be a Beatrice has to be one of those 18.
But the fact that they keep hammering this in so much kind of makes me think that it's not true. But what do I know? Curious-san denied the existence of a 19th person by spinning the chessboard around. Even though Aunt Eva hadn't constructed an argument that complicated, her opinion at least was the same. Except if that's the case, our situation starts to look very ugly. At the time of Beatrice's letter, the whole thing could be passed off as a prank set up by someone or another. However, if we're assuming there's no 19th person, we can't ignore this anymore. In other words, if there is no 19th person, then the culprit who killed Dad and the others is also one of the 18, right? So in other words, the person who killed them is one of the people inside this very mansion right now. It's Zero Escape all over again. Aunt Eva smiled meaningfully. It looked like she thought this conclusion should have been obvious from the very beginning.
The culprit carried the bodies of those thieves into the storehouse. But even that was an impressive feat, don't you think? That shutter is always closed and locked, right? In other words, in order to carry them into the storehouse, the culprit would need to unlock the shutter. Understand?
Is it possible the shutter was left open by mistake that day?
The servant said it's always kept locked. In other words, unless the culprit took the keys from the servant room, there's no way they could have opened the storehouse.
But all the servants that were here were murdered, so I don't see how it's unlikely they just took the key from the servant room, since there was nobody to stop them anymore after they were fucking dead. I wonder if the key in the servant room was the only one.
Genji-san said that was the case, which means the culprit knew where that single key was kept and took it.
Okay, I mean, that's true.
Just now I watched when Kanan-kun returned the key to the servant room. The wall was packed with keys, and I don't think a novice would know where or what those keys went to.
I see, okay. True, I was picturing there being just one key, but of course there should be lots of keys.
The culprit was miraculously able to find the storehouse key among all of those.
How do you know that? Maybe it took almost all the night to find the right one.
Furthermore, even though the key didn't have a tag or anything sticking to it, they knew it was the key to the storehouse behind the rose garden. And that means they also knew where the storehouse was. I'll say it even clearer. The culprit knew the inside of the servant room well.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, true. That kind of implicates pretty much all the people, not even all the people here, but mostly the people who know the place very well, like servants and people who live there. But on the other hand, if you plan something like this, and it's really nothing supernatural, and you plan something like this, you would probably stake out the place, right? You would like, if you were able to pull it off in secret, I would imagine you would also be able to observe the place so much that you eventually know where you could do this and which key you need. Well, just saying. Her argument was extremely plain and clear. If the bodies had been found thrown somewhere in the bushes of the rose garden, there wouldn't have been much to go on. However, if there was only one key to the storehouse in the servant room, and it was stored with such a large group of keys, a novice would not be able to tell them apart. This meant the culprit was someone who went into the servant room a lot and was familiar with the locations of the keys. The family members didn't normally go into the servant room, which means that one of the servants is the culprit? Okay. I'm sorry, but even I can't tell you any more than that. However, I'll tell you one thing. What's that? It's reasonable to think that the culprits are multiple in number and fairly well armed. Why do you think it's more than one person? They'd have to be, wouldn't they? They had to assault the 4 in the dining hall and kill them, drag a total of 6 bodies all the way to the storehouse beyond the rose garden, and arrange for the disgusting makeup and the graffiti on the shutter. Yeah, I guess if you put it that way, it is not unlikely that it was more than one person. There's no way that a single culprit could carry out all of that on their own, right? I don't know. Maybe. It made sense. It probably would have been possible for a single person with enough time, but it would take so incredibly long. It was probably safe to assume that a significant number of people were involved. Might be, So what you're saying is that maybe all of the servants were in cahoots.
Please keep it quiet, okay? It wouldn't be right to voice mere speculation like this. And if it really is true, what would you do next? They might not let us leave here alive. This is an opponent who had no trouble killing Nissan and the 3 others. Right now, the only ones I can count on to fight with me are the 3 in my family and maybe you, which comes to a total of 4 people, right?
What do you mean, maybe? Maybe me and no one else? So the 3 in my family, I guess she means George, Hideyoshi, and herself. So she's ruling out Jessica? But why? And Natsuhi? Okay, I get she doesn't like Natsuhi, but still. It's Ifa. It's, his aunt, yeah. And the mother of George. And the wife of Hideyoshi. Okay. We're no better off than they were last night. In short, it'll be easy for the culprits to massacre the rest of us. I'd been playing detective with Aunt Eva, trying to expose the person who had killed Dad and the rest before the police did. If only I could cleverly penetrate the culprit's identity and stick the proof in their face. I'd been so sure that, just like in one of those detective movies or Ace Attorney, the culprit would then give up and surrender. However, the culprit would only surrender if there was no way for them to fight back. Yeah, considering they just murdered 6 people, I don't think they're gonna be very impressed with just one measly battler-kun shoving anything in their face. The culprits behind the crime on this island were far from helpless and might even be able to massacre all of the remaining people here. And on top of that, this island was like a giant closed room, cut off from the outside world by the typhoon, so they had a full day until tomorrow to kill, scheme, and camouflage themselves. You remember that. I would say probably everybody who saw that will never forget it again. In short, it wasn't a safe atmosphere where we could get very far by playing detective. To the contrary, we were at a stage where we had to be scared stiff, since playing detective might displease the culprits and cause them to commit another mass murder.
Well, it is just a possibility, right? But I can't bring myself to trust the servants yet. And that doesn't mean I only suspect them. Don't you think there might be some mastermind behind all this?
You could say Kinzo, but I mean that would be too obvious again. A mastermind? Why do you say that? Now it's Danganronpa.
It's just a feeling. Think about what the word servant literally means. It means someone who serves as someone else's arms and legs, right? It was a bunch of Uromiya family members who got killed, so naturally there must be someone involved who stands to gain from that result.
This was also plain and clear. The Oshiromiya family had been right in the middle of discussions about how to distribute the inheritance when grandfather died. For a second I thought they meant that he died, but it's a saying how to distribute it once that happens. If this case followed the standard form of any classic mystery novel, the crime was definitely caused by someone with ties to the Oshiromiya family and who was involved in the inheritance problem. Aunt Eva had probably read a few books in that genre herself. Her argument may have had a few blind assumptions in it, but it was a standard conclusion that anyone might have reached. I think most people would end up suspecting the servants, even if they used different reasonings to get there. Especially the story about the key to the shutter. That made it very easy to suspect that one of the servants was involved, but on the other hand, because it's so easy to suspect that, maybe it's wrong. And that's why I don't like it.
What do you mean you don't like it?
Nah, just talking to myself. Stupid laughter, man. I tried to dodge her question by joking, but I couldn't erase the sense of unease welling up inside me. After all, her conclusion was such an easy one to reach. A conclusion that anyone could reach, and I just couldn't be satisfied with that. If I tried spinning the chessboard around like I learned from Kiria-san, this was exactly why a servant couldn't possibly be the culprit. If the servants really were the culprits, they wouldn't hide the bodies in a place connected to themselves. Why on earth would they use the Rose Garden shed if they were the ones in charge of the key that could unlock it? The police would probably immediately pursue whoever had been in control of the key. It was even possible that some other facts might come to light as a result. The more we think of the servants as the culprits, the less reason they had to carry the bodies into the storehouse. But what if they knew we'd think that and put the corpses in the storehouse for that very reason? Now that's completely impossible. When the police come and inspect the scene of the crime, they'll probably be able to uncover many things. No matter how carefully the culprits carried out that murder, some traces will definitely be found. In other words, they had everything to lose and nothing to gain. If you think about it this way and look at this murder game from the culprit's side, it's hard to imagine why they'd want to call attention to the corpses. Once the corpses were found, it could result in someone sending a report to the police, or it might make the remaining people more cautious, or it might make the survivors start to search for the culprit. None of these things would make life any easier for the culprit. It's just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Nice. They're referencing Higurashi. That's another visual novel by the same people. It appeared before this one. Just like the words of the main character's mother in a novel I read recently called Higurashi no Nakugoro ni. Every story needs to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Eliminating that beginning is essential for the perfect crime. Right now, we don't know where grandfather is. We don't know if he's already become a victim or if he's one of the culprits. But the state of confusion must be beneficial to the killer. The culprit has absolutely nothing to gain by showing us the bodies in such an obvious way and making us all realize there's been a murder. In fact, this is the perfect place to spin the chessboard around. In other words, showing us the corpses in such a flashy way must be the culprit's goal in and of itself. No, I have not played Kara no Shoujo. Should I? I think Patrick actually told me of it as well. So at the very least, to the culprit, the appearance of 6 corpses there meant more than the death themselves. In other words, the culprit wanted this murder on display. To whom? To us. This is a message. The culprit's trying to shove something in our faces. I don't know what it is. At this point in time, this vulgar mass murder isn't making me feel anything except a malice directed towards all of us. Malice towards all of us, is it? Huh, okay. And on sale on Steam right now. I gotta look at that later. Each one of the survivors has some kind of connection to one of the 6 victims. Uncle Klaus's death brought Jessica the grief of losing a family member. The death of Dad and Kiria-san brought me sorrow, while Aunt Rosa's death brought Maria sorrow. Yeah, I'm not sure I would say that. So far, she hasn't struck me as being particularly moved by that. Goda-san's death probably shocked his fellow servants, and Shannon-chan's death brought grief both to George Aniki, who had proposed to her, and Kanon-kun, who had loved her like an older sister. Everyone now on this island has received an equal amount of sadness. Aunt Eva was sure that the servants were in cahoots, but then how could you explain the death of Goda-san and Shannon-chan? At any rate, by this argument, the grief caused by the sixth death hit everyone but Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi. Huh, I see where you're going. Even Aunt Eva, who had direct suspicion of the servants and acted as though she herself was beyond suspicion, could not be ruled out as a suspect. In the first place, she was able to argue that the servants were suspicious by focusing on the Sutter's key, but if you look at it from a perspective of motive and who would gain, Aunt Eva's name rises to the top of the list. Yeah, she is kind of suspicious. I know what you're thinking, Battler-kun. Huh? Oh no, please don't tell anybody about how my head's so full of obscene stuff. I'm the one who's going to gain the most from these murders. Oh, she's quick to catch on, is she? Since I'm going to be suspected anyway, I might as well get it out in the open. Yeah, I made plenty fun of his name already, but I keep doing it as well. I tried to dodge the issue by joking around, but apparently it didn't work. And yeah, the soundtrack is amazing so far. Especially the song that played in the shed was so well done. And like also the contrast to everything that had been playing before. Everything was calm music, and then they in such a holy shit moment they play such a completely different genre of music that was very, very well done. The inheritance will be divided into as many parts as there are siblings, but right now I'm the only one of the 4 left. All of the assets of the Shiromiya family will become mine. If Uncle Hideyoshi heard you, he'd say, could you give it a rest? It's not funny. I'm sorry. I was just fooling around since I'm going to be suspected anyway, no matter how much I try to smooth it over. That's why, from my point of view, this murder might have been designed to cast suspicion on me. Unfortunately, my alibi for last night is weak. Could you tell me a bit more about last night? As you know, the discussion between the siblings of how to slice up and eat the inheritance continued until late in the night. Oh, new tracks in every single episode. Holy shit, that is amazing. But I don't know how late it lasted. My husband and I had woken up early that morning. We were so sleepy, and a little past midnight they let us go. We then returned to the guest house and rested there. Can anyone other than Uncle Hideyoshi prove that? No, wait, it's not like I suspect you or anything, okay? Even though I just totally did in my head. Oh, are you sure about that? I don't know if it counts as proof, but when we returned to the guest house, we were greeted by Genji-san, who asked if we needed a towel. Ja, den Song habe ich schon auf YouTube gefunden. Ich habe auf YouTube eine Playliste gefunden, die Lieder in chronologischer Reihenfolge sortiert, sodass ich mich auch nicht spoilere mit Liedern, die ich noch nicht kenne. I think that should have been enough to prove we returned to the guest house a little after midnight. Though, if my theory was correct, the servants would all be in a cahoots, and that wouldn't actually make much of an alibi. Hey, you've got a point there. Guess that means I'm playing detective with the real culprit right now, huh? Yee. However, let me say this for my honor's sake. If I was after the inheritance, I'd never commit such a bizarre set of murders. After all, if I just wanted to make them forfeit their rights to the inheritance, it wouldn't matter to me how they died. It'd be much smarter of me to try and make the deaths look like accidents. Especially if you're assuming I laid out some careful plan that involved even the servants. Yeah, Has a point there. Yeah, and he says the same thing. You've got a point there. If you're killing someone for personal gain, you definitely shouldn't make it look like a murder. Exactly. That's why I am in such a blue mood. The police will probably treat me like the mastermind and investigate all kinds of things. Not fun at all. Aunt Eva shrugged with a bitter smile. It was just as easy to suspect Aunt Eva as it was to suspect the servants. So if we spin the chessboard around once more, does that make it impossible for the culprit to be her, suspicious as she is? However, if that sort of argument always works, then motive can never help us in any way. No, that can't be right. Knowing the motive must give us powerful clues towards knowing the culprit. That's why murderers from all time periods disguise crimes in complicated ways, cleverly preventing their motives from being discovered. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Every time I spin the chessboard around, it keeps flipping from front to back and back to front. Are my thoughts bringing me closer to the truth, or are they